My name is Joe Peroni, and this is the Rise Above Project. And today I want to talk about the most important relationship skill that you will need to improve any relationship. I'm going to give you the answer right up front, and then we're going to work on it in a lot more detail as we go along. So here's the answer. You want to be able to provide a corrective emotional experience. But before we get into that, I want to ask a very important question. So why do you think people are so hesitant, defensive, and resistant in trying to be open and honest and emotionally available to other people? Why are people so distrustful of others and have difficulty opening it up and showing their true selves? I think we all have different answers. Here's my answer in as short of a way as I can say it. I think it's because people have expectations that they're going to get the same familiar, uncaring, invalidating, unhelpful, unwanted responses that trigger their fear, shame, and guilt. Also, I think people are afraid of being used, abused, and taken advantage of. And what they realize a lot of times throughout their life, starting at an early age, that their feelings and emotions are too much for other people. And so they start to become estranged from their own feelings and emotions. They become estranged from themselves. And in doing, they truly become estranged from other people, because then it's possible that they get liked or loved by other people. But is it real? Because if you're not putting out your true self and you're being loved, then how do you know that you're really being loved for who you are? You don't. So as you think about this and as you get older, it causes a lot more emotional disturbance. And as we know, people build up a lot of emotional walls. And I don't think that this is necessarily a bad thing. I think it's actually a good thing in a lot of ways, because it's adaptive and it's necessary in environments that might be invalidating or even threatening. So it basically is a defense mechanism, or it's a coping skill when you're not truly loved and accepted for who you are. So let's go back to the beginning. A corrective emotional experience. What is it? Here's my definition. To be able to respond in a safe way, an empowering way, and in a way that resolves somebody's previous negative relational templates. And in doing so, you're not going to reenact all the negativity that they may have experienced in their life. So that's my definition. I want to take a look at what Psych Central says, because they may have a differing view. Here's what they say. A corrective emotional experience. It looks at past events and explores how they shaped your reactions and behaviors. The theory is that taking an honest look at the past helps individuals understand who they are and why they behave and react in the ways that they do. This method is often led by a skilled therapist or a skilled human being in a safe environment. And understand that in all good, productive, healthy, growing relationships, they should be safe environments. The idea is that once you're in a therapeutic relationship with a kind, loving, and supportive therapist, or friend, or lover, or just any human being, you will have a different experience from what you had in your traumatic past. This gives you an opportunity to feel, experience, and know something can be different. During therapy, or in a relationship, or in a conversation, as you explore the past, a person can respond in a kind and loving way, which corrects the emotional experience that somebody may have had in their traumatic past. You can then internalize this and take it with you in the relationships you have out in the world. So I think we're in agreement there. of what a corrective emotional experience is and why it's so important. So how do you do this? Well, what someone needs to do is to be able to have the ability to provide a safe holding environment to contain and not judge somebody's feelings. Very interesting. The other day I had mentioned this. Somebody said, well, what can you do for my daughter? How can you help her in any way? And I said, well, first, I want to give her a safe environment where she can express her emotions and feelings and not feel like she's being judged. And she could speak in a safe place where she doesn't have to monitor herself and try to manage other people's feelings, such as parents. She looked at me and said, oh, a safe place. You must be one of those liberals, because I think that safe places are only for snowflakes. So again, I think this is why this show is important. The thought of the safe place has been commandeered by certain people. We're not going to talk about that because I think it's probably unnecessary. But the idea of having a safe place, having confidentiality, somebody accepting who you are, is pretty, it's standard in when you have a lawyer. It's standard with doctors. It's standard in religion where you go and confess your sins in a safe place. So I don't know why some people today are so afraid. And I think it makes me scared as a human and as a therapist that people don't want their children to have safe places. I think it's disturbing, to say the least. But let's continue. What skills are needed to create a corrective emotional experience? Number one, empathize cognitively as well as affectively, meaning that you want to know about why they feel the way they do. And number two, try to understand their feelings. Put your feet in somebody else's shoes so you can feel what they feel, but also maybe understand from a logistics way of why they're thinking the way they're thinking. Number two, articulate empathic understanding and acceptance. In other words, you can be a very good person and be accepting, but the other person, because of prior situations that may have been negative, they don't know if you are with them or not, or if you're a safe place to be able to express. So you need to articulate that you have understanding and that you accept who they are. Number three, communicate acceptance of a person's pain non-verbally. You can do this with having a strong presence and being available emotionally. I notice this with just everyday life and also with therapy. Some therapists don't have the ability to sit in somebody else's pain. They want to fix it real quick and they start to talk. And they can't just let the person sit in their pain. Because sometimes, actually all the time, it's necessary for people to understand that the pain they're in. When people talk about grief, don't try to move on to a different subject to take it away. You see this all the time in the way people shut people down. Somebody will say, well, this happened to me. And they'll go, oh, that happened to me too, but much worse. Or they'll try to say a joke or something to take the pressure off. That's not what people need in a corrective emotional experience. If you show that you're being overwhelmed emotionally in front of somebody, that their feelings and emotions are not acceptable to you, that's a problem. So a skill that's needed is to not be overwhelmed by somebody's feelings and emotions and thoughts and perceptions. Now, it's understandable that somebody might be overwhelmed by something, and that's okay. You know, we're not all equipped to handle people's pain and to be able to accept it. That's true. That's something that needs to be worked on, and it's a skill. It's a very difficult skill to work on. However, if you are being overwhelmed, you need to take it on yourself and say that. The things that you're saying right now, I have a hard time hearing because it affects me so much. It's not you that's the problem, it's me. You can do that. Most people that have difficulty in their life with these templates where people don't allow them to speak, what bothers them the most is not their own feelings and emotions that bother them, their anxiety, their depression. That pales in comparison to them being stifled by other people and having them roll their eyes or look at them in disgust about what they're trying to convey or to speak about. That hurts even more, because then it reinforces to them that they are not acceptable for who they are. So how do we break down these walls with people? Well, I'm going to use that for another show because it gets kind of complicated. But we don't always have to break down walls, because the need for attachment and connection is so important to people that most people, no matter how much negativity they have had in their life, no matter how much pain, they still will try to inch out very slowly and try to give you just a little bit to see if you're okay with understanding who they are. They will try to connect. And it's in that moment that we can build that connection and a relationship. Again, it's the most important relationship skill that you will ever need to improve all of your relationships. So let's do this in a way to be able to enforce what I'm saying. And I have a couple of friends to help me out. So what we're going to do is, how does this corrective emotional experience play out in Kruger National Park in South Africa? So we have some friends today, and here is Courage. This is Courage the lion. As you can see, he's big, he's strong, he's got that dark mane, and he is king. Unquestioned. But underneath all that, he used to be a cub. And when he was a cub, he was told by his father and his brothers never to have feelings and emotions. They were absolutely unnecessary. And when he did show feelings and emotions, he was ridiculed, made fun of, and beat up. And at that moment, at a very young age, he realized that his true self was not acceptable in his world. So he became something different. He became what other people wanted him to be, or other lions wanted him to be. And so he hid himself from the world. And he showed himself in only the ways that were acceptable to other people. But deep down inside, he was not feeling good. As time goes on, he was kicked out of the pride. And he became a successful lone male, as you can see. Well, one day, he meets a lioness. Her name is Trigger, and you'll know why in a second. She was attracted to him because he was big, strong, stoic, didn't show emotions and feelings. It made her feel safe and secure. And so she wanted to be attached to him and go through life because it would benefit her. One day, Courage the lion, and by the way, he's named Courage because when you have courage, you do have anxiety, you do have fear, you do have stress, but you act anyway. And that's why we call him Courage. One day, Courage was patrolling his territory to protect his family. And he came across two male, full-grown lions, each weighing 650 pounds. So what did Courage do? He attacked and he defended his territory. And lo and behold, as you can see, he won. So he went back to Trigger, his girlfriend. He was bitten, he was cut up, he was bleeding, he was limping, but he survived. And there's our king. He made it. He felt good about his victory. She was ecstatic about his victory. And of course, as lions do, they ended up having a good night and they slept it off in the grasslands. Now, as many people can understand, pillow talk afterwards when you feel just a little bit more like you want to be open with your partner. And what he does is he describes to Trigger that when he approached those two full-grown male lions, that he was scared and he was nervous. And he contemplated what it would be like to die and to not live up to his expectations and have his family die because he couldn't do the job. She looked at him. First of all, non-verbally. She rolled her eyes. She looked at him with disgust and thought, a lion is supposed to just attack and not have emotions and feelings. That's the way she was raised. So she looked at him and said, the fact that you're scared and nervous, it makes me feel not taken care of, not secure, not safe. I don't know if I can be here. I don't like this. But of course she stayed. And he did his job. But at that moment, that's why her name is Trigger. Because she triggered every single negative emotional experience that he had as a cub and going through his life with his father and his brothers. And in that moment, even though he's big, strong, massive, 650 pounds of muscle and teeth and claws, still felt like a little boy that didn't belong, that nobody cared about, that he wasn't good enough. Enter another lioness. Her name is C, spelled C-E-E. If you haven't figured that out yet, her name means corrective emotional experience. So she asks him, how do you feel today? He says, I don't know. Actually, inside he did know, but he was afraid to say anything because he's not allowed to. And he knew that the bites and the claw marks that he had to suffer from the fight a week earlier, they didn't hurt half as bad as the emotional pain of being devalued and pushed away for who he really is. So he had that pain deep down inside. He didn't want to say anything. So she says to him, no, really, how are you? And he says, things are great. She says, I heard about the incident last week. And he says, who did you talk to? And she says, I talked to Trigger. Okay, so now you hate me as much as she does. That's what he was expecting. She doesn't act like that. She says, no, I don't feel that way. You went out and bravely attacked 2 other full-grown lions and did your job. I can completely understand why you would be a little bit nervous about fighting 2 lions, considering that you're only one. And I could see how it would create a level of anxiety, being that you might die yourself. I can completely understand that. That totally makes sense. But look at you. You're a hero. You worked through it and you did it anyway. And then she went and rubbed past him, which is a lion version of a hug. So what happened here? This is what happened. Number 1, our lioness C was able to provide a corrective emotional experience that he had never had throughout his life. She showed empathy cognitively, empathy effectively. She articulated empathic understanding and acceptance. And she communicated acceptance through nonverbal communication. And she never gave the impression of being overwhelmed by the fact that he had feelings and emotions, and did question whether he could beat 2 lions at one time. So the moral of the story is, for everybody listening, if you're still here, who do you want to be? Do you want to be someone who, because of your own insecurity, stifles somebody else from talking? Or do you want to work on yourself enough that you can be that person that provides a safe environment, that can provide a corrective emotional experience for somebody. So I hope this show was valuable to you in some way. My name is Joe Peroni. Please subscribe and tell a friend. And one more thing, no lions were hurt in this video. Thank you.